Hey everyone, welcome to Past Lives and the Divine. I'm Gina, and this is the podcast where we enjoy conversations about past lives and the divine all around us and within us. In today's episode, we're talking about astrology and self-care. And as you know, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, I love using astrology to help understand myself better. And I am very much on a path of understanding my needs and wants, more specifically the ones that I've been culturally trained to let go of or ignore, and because they weren't good enough or they were too much or whatever. And astrology has really, at this point right now as I'm recording this, I would say that is what I lean on the most in astrology, is this understanding of myself in a way of just facts. It's not that this is good or bad. It's just, is this working for the life you want? Does this feel good in the everyday? And astrology has really helped me with that. And I love the self-care conversation because I honestly believe this is something else I am uncovering in myself, is that the question of what do I need or what do I want is a really good way to step into the portal of growth, evolution, understanding, healing, feeling better, because it's in that understanding of what we want and need is all kinds of cultural programming on what we should want, what we should need, and then also if we have innate feelings of not being worthy or needing to fulfill everyone else's needs before we fulfill our own, or whatever that is. It's just a really good way for self-exploration. And that is why I love these conversations, and because I love Ashley and Meredith. So as always, they'll do a little intro, but Meredith is the name and the soul behind Earthling Astrology, and I cannot recommend her astrology practices, readings, and programs and classes enough. I just really like the way that she kind of focuses on the soul path and the soul growth and what it all means as we move forward in this life. And then of course we have Ashley Sondergaard from the Yoga Magic podcast. The latest episode that I've listened to of the Yoga Magic podcast, now this will be weeks into the future when you listen to this, but it is the one on codependency. And it is right around kind of the beginning of September was an episode that she released on codependency. And I think codependency is kind of like that word addiction, where when we hear it, we either identify with it or not. And sometimes when we're nope, that's not me, I'm not codependent, we miss all the ways, the light ways that we are, the ways that we put other people in front of us in times that don't matter, in times where what I'm uncovering in myself is probably because my partner Alex just broke his foot. So I'm trying not to over take care of him and be he's a 40-year-old grown-ass man. So if he says he feels fine doing something that I maybe feel like he shouldn't, I'm just gonna let it go. It's really this topic that I think of where it's it's not, am I codependent? What's my opinion? It's, maybe how am I? How am I doing this? How am I a part of this codependency? What does that really mean for me? What does that really mean in general? I think a lot of people have different ideas about what that is. Anyway, so a little more on the intro than you were maybe expecting, but I've been spending a lot of time alone, having a lot of thoughts, and these are the things that are just coming to the front of my mind. So if you're in the same boat, if you're feeling the same things, definitely check out that episode of Yoga Magic Podcast, and check out earthlingastrology.com for her services and readings and classes. See if any of those jive with you and where you're at. As always, you can find Ashley and Meredith, all their links to all their things in the show notes of this episode. All right. So in this episode, we are diving into that Libra energy. As the sun moves into Libra, we are talking about that Libra energy. And you know what? Guess who's a Libra sun? That's me. I'm a Libra sun, I'm a Scorpio rising, and I'm an Aries moon. So for most of my life, I never really identified with like the Libra thing. But as we'll get into in this episode, as I get older, that kind of shifts for a few reasons. Okay. If you get to the end of this episode, or if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I would like a past life regression, or I would like a coaching session with Ashley, or a reading from Meredith, go to the show notes. You can get to pastlivesandthedivine.com, you can get to earthlingastrology.com, and you can get to ashley.sondergaard.com for all of that information linked in the show notes. I, of course, do virtual sessions. So if you are not located in Minnesota or don't want to come to Minneapolis for a session, that's perfect, because guess what? I'm doing online sessions. So you can go to pastlivesandthedivine.com. I am getting pretty booked through the end of the year. I'm going to be, of course, adding more hours as I shift some things around for 2022. Like, can you believe it's going to be 2022? So definitely hop on the schedule if it's something you want to do before the end of the year. And if you are not on my email list, head over to pastlivesandthedivine.com/subscribe to get on that email list, because I'm going to be launching a hypnosis training in 2022, and I will be launching a membership, like a membership for you to pay once at the beginning of the year, and then just we can be a group and meet regularly and do some hypnosis things and just digging into ourselves and sharing that space together. TBD on all of those details, but definitely hop over on my email list and check out my website if you're in this episode and you're like, hey, I want to know more. That's where you can get more. Okay, are you ready? Gather around the fire for our conversation with Meredith from Earthling Astrology and Ashley Sondergaard from the Yoga Magic Podcast as we dive into that Libra energy. All right, here again with Ashley and Meredith. I am so excited to talk about this Libra energy, because I think I've talked about this before, but I am just the first time in my life now really starting to feel like I identify with that Libra energy. And it's probably a couple things. Like, number one, I'm just learning more about it. People always talk about the sunny side of it. And it was like, oh, all that shadowy stuff is like where I reside in Libra, or where I did for most of my life. I feel like it's like, oh, that's why I didn't identify with it. So just as I get older, the more I can see like the positives of Libra and how I'm inviting that in. But regardless, I just learned so much on these episodes. So teach me about my sign, Meredith.
I know we got a Libra here today. So do we want to do intros, or should we jump right in? Have we done?
Let's do our short intros just in case.
Yes, I'm Meredith McCowan, owner of Earthling Astrology. I've been on the pod numerous times with Ashley as well. Happy to be back here talking about Libra, the 7th sign of the zodiac. And I'll throw it to Ashley to do a quick intro, and then I'll jump in with some knowledge bombs. Is that what you call them, Ashley? What do you call when I say
truth bombs?
Truth bombs, knowledge bombs. Yeah. You have the cutest expressions that I steal.
I'm Ashley Sondergaard. I am a self-care coach. I am the host of the podcast Yoga Magic. And y'all, I am officially studying astrology. I'm formally studying it now, just because you guys, you made my life better. And now I want to be able to do that for others. So heck yeah.
Yes, that makes me so excited. Sarah Leverett and I were talking about that. She's like, she actually called herself an astrologer on the podcast. I was like,
I'm hesitant because I have friends like you guys who have been doing this stuff forever and ever. And I've been doing the yoga and the self-care forever. But, my Aries North Node is like, it's about you, girl. You can do this. You can do this.
Yes. Fuck yeah. Yeah.
Ashley, are you comfortable sharing where you're getting your training from? There's so many programs out there. So just curious if you want to share yours.
Yes. So I'm trying to do it in like bits. I want to spread it out. I know you and I have talked about mentorship. I've done a ton of free stuff. I've read a gazillion books, and now I'm dabbling in courses from Astrology University. Mm-hmm. So just getting like one at a time, because you can do them over the course of 4 years. And I just found that those to be I know Kelly Surtees is on there. There's just a lot of amazing teachers on there, But Meredith, for a lot of listeners, I bet are in this area of life of like, I want to study more. Where should I start? So any, tips that you have too?
I was going to go there. I get that question a lot. And I mean, there's books, there's Astrology Hub, Astrology University, online courses. And you can do all that. You got to do all that. Go to the books, the articles, the blogs, the online learning, the classes. I always recommend a mentor, and not just maybe one mentor, but many. Learn from many different people. And that's going to give you a foundation. But the way you really learn astrology is to practice it. So once you feel like you have a foundation, I always tell people to do free readings, and you're not really reading someone when you want to practice astrology. Look at the birth chart and ask them questions to make sure, hey, you have Mars in Libra. Is this kind of like how you express anger? Kind of ask questions. And that's how I did it. I did all these free readings for a year and asked people questions about their birth chart. And then I was able to kind of start layering on my interpretations. And after about a year or two of practice, I threw away the books. So I came up with my own system, my own intuition about the chart and all that kind of stuff, but it takes time. Some people with a lot of Aquarius in their charts can soak it up pretty quickly, or a lot of air maybe in the chart. Other people might have to do it the long, slow, hard way. There's no timeline and when you're automatically know how to read a birth chart. It could take 3 months, it could take 3 years. So really be patient with yourself and know there is a lot of memorization. Learning astrology is like getting a PhD. That's what people don't realize, or maybe numerous PhDs. I'm still learning. Like we'll never stop learning. Even the greats still learn things. I guarantee it.
Gosh, that is really good, because I am certain there are listeners to like past lives in the divine, right? I'm not an astrologer, but I know there are listeners who are like, I want to learn more. I'm always like, go see Meredith, go see Ashley, tune into these episodes. But yeah, to take it even further, this is maybe kind of a tangent question, but is there a governing body of astrology?
There are two organizations. One is OPA, the Organization for Professional Astrologers. And I've been to a couple of their conferences, made some friends there, and they're really good about a certification course and the ethics of astrology. They really pump the ethics, but it doesn't really govern astrology. They don't really make the rules. You don't have to follow them. You can choose to get certified by them or another person. And then there's NCGR, the National Council for Geocosmic Research. I was actually the vice president of the organization in Minneapolis a couple of years ago, and they're another organization with different branches in different cities. And they take a more intellectual approach to astrology. I don't know where the name Geocosmic Research came from. I don't really know the history of the organization, but I believe they're the oldest. So those are the two big ones that I am members of and used to be a part of, and still, again, am part of these organizations that put on conferences and things of that nature. So yes,
Very
but not
cool.
like yoga. I know with yoga, there's actual laws or like you need so many hours before you're certified. And astrology is just like wild card. That's what I kind of like about it too. There are no rules. It's very Aquarian, like make it your own.
Yeah, it's funny because that's the background, right? Is yoga, and it's so structured, and there's so many different checkpoints and whatever, as much time. Whereas even, I know Sarah Lever, who's on the show, like we've talked a little about this journey into doing past life regression, and just you can choose your own adventure a little bit more, and that feels so fun, and also like sometimes really overwhelming to think like, okay, astrology, go. What am I supposed to do?
Oh God.
No one's telling you what to do. You just have to figure it out.
I know, and I'm trying to bridge the gap between like the professional astrologers and the pop astrologers, as they're called, like the ones that make the memes and are maybe less serious astrologers. And I don't think they're bad in any way. I love pop astrology, but sometimes the more professional astrologers can be like, oh, they're giving us a bad name. I'm like, yeah, really? You got to appeal to different generations, people's different brain waves, all that kind of stuff. So I love pop astrology, and I love that's like, at least it's getting people interested. But yeah, the OPA for sure is really, you asked us, actually, Gina, we're gonna talk about this later, about the ethics of reading a birth chart and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, maybe we can wrap this up towards the end while we jump into Libra for anyone listening that wants to hear about
Should
Libra.
we listen to Libra?
Yeah, and then we'll talk more maybe general astrology at the end.
Perfect.
Okay, So I will give a few facts about Libra here. It is a cardinal sign, just like Aries, Cancer, and Capricorn, which means it starts a season. When Libra season starts, we have autumn comes, and cardinal signs tend to be like really good at starting things, like let's get up and go, just like starting a season, let's go. Maybe not so good at finishing things. So if you're a Libra, Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, how many things do you start and then put on the shelf? Think about that. It's an air sign, so more abstract, ability to detach. And it's the only sign of the zodiac that is not represented by an animal. And I was actually thinking about this on my walk yesterday, and I'm like, what is that about? So Libra is represented by the scales. And Libra is the sign of relationships. And I was thinking that maybe they don't have an animal because Libra is the sign that tends to lose themselves, their body, or like their identity the most. So it's kind of funny that there's this abstract scale symbol for the sign that loses itself the most. And I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but it was just like I was walking and it popped into my brain. It's ruled by the planet Venus and associated with the 7th house in the birth chart. So I haven't talked about that. We've mentioned the houses before, but if you know your birth chart and you have, maybe a ton of planets in the 7th house, you're going to act a little bit like a Libra. So for example, I have a 7th house moon in Sagittarius. So I'm a Sagittarius moon with like a Libra undertone. Where Gina, you are a Libra. I talked about this on the Pisces pod. You are a Libra, but yours is in the 12th house, which is Pisces territory. So you're a Libra with like a Pisces flare. Super complex. I won't get too into that, but if you feel like, well, I really feel like a Libra, but I'm not one, look at that 7th house in your birth chart. And that might explain a few things of why you feel like a Libra. Okay, some traits about Libras, the sign of relationships. So these are the people pleasers of the zodiac. They have the most trouble saying no. I have met very few Libras where I asked them in their session, like, do you have trouble saying the word no? And their eyes get big. They're like, yes. And I think there's actually a book out there. The title of the book is literally How to Say No. So I recommend that to all my Libras. There's a lot of guilt. Libras are wired to put other people first. That is just how they're wired. They can think constantly about the other person or other people. And I think that factors into why they are the most indecisive sign of the zodiac as well. Gina, does this indecisive nature of Libra show up for you? Do you have to run everything? Say you're making a decision with a group. Do you have to like think about how the decision is going to affect everybody else? Or I know you got that Aries moon, so.
Yeah, I'm an empath. I grew up with, addicted parents. Like like everything in my life has pushed me down the people-pleasing path. And what's so fucking crazy is that I didn't think of myself as codependent or people pleaser until I started being like, how does this affect me? And then I see all the covert ways that I do it. And I can even give up a lot of control and seem indecisive, but that's almost like a way for me to control of like, no, I'm good. I'm go with the flow because I want them to pick something, or I want,
That totally. My best friend is a Libra moon, and she's like, well, I want to go like to Applebee's tonight. And she's like, but only if you want to, like we don't have to go there, like she'll always kind of like do that. And my sister's a Libra too. And, if I ask her to do something via text, she sometimes just doesn't reply. And then I know that it's a no. She literally can't even type the word no. When she is not replying, I'm like, okay, she can't come. It's just hilarious on how this like kind of shows up. Since Libra is relationship energy, Libras can tend to stay in relationships too long. When the relationship has hit their expiration date, they tend to kind of cling. Sometimes, and self-known Libra, this plays out too, they are constantly in relationships. I always tell my Libra people, like, make sure you're single just a little bit so you can kind of come back to yourself. Otherwise, you have that propensity to kind of like lose yourself in partnership and jump from one to the other. So Ashley, did you want to chime in and say something? I saw you like
no, I know.
in your arms.
I'm like putting fun of myself. I'm South Nord Libra, and I went from a high school relationship to my husband. So
were you ever single? Like
I don't think I've ever been single in my whole life.
Since before wow. Okay. Yeah, and that's so common, Ashley. You don't even know. Like the South Node, and I want to say Libra moons actually maybe more than the Libra suns, kind of jumping in to different relationships.
Oh, wow.
Okay, some positive keywords for Libra. They're cooperative, fair, gentle, artistic because of the Venus rulership. And I feel like the Libra artistic streak is more abstract. Where the Venus also rules Taurus, is more like the physical, beauty, clothes, all that kind of stuff. I see more abstract art with Libras, and I don't know if Gina, you want to chime in on like the kind of art that you enjoy, or maybe you can even put words to it, but I see that more air element playing out with the Venus artistic streaks. The negatives that talked about: indecisive, they can be aloof, lose their sense of self, and avoid conflict like nobody's business. Libras will not want to rock the boat at all. They are allergic to conflict. And maybe conflict more so that they are involved in. They can maybe be like a judge or a jury where they're not emotionally attached to the people. They can kind of zoom out and see both sides of it when they're not inside of the conflict. It's different. Does that make sense? Like whether you're in the conflict or watching it?
Totally.
So Libras would rather watch it than be a part of it. And that's why they come with this diplomatic kind of fair judge scales. They'd rather not be in it. They can help make the decision on how to move forward. But yeah, they will run a million miles in the other direction, or really, like my sister, not even respond to messages, just like ghost you.
That is crazy. Okay, so this might be my Aries moon, but sometimes I think of myself as like, that's another thing where I used to be like, yeah, but I go in and I stir up conflict sometimes. But that actually, the way you describe that, Meredith, I'm having a moment right now, because I used to like get into fights sometimes, like in elementary, like,
well, that's your Aries moon. That is not your Libra sun. 100%. Yeah.
Why I would do it would be like some kid who's like a jackass would be like picking on a different kid. Then like we would pick up that kid and like push him against the wall and punch him. Not good. I wasn't a bully, but he was like being so mean to like someone who didn't have any friends or whatever. So it was very much this like, I don't know,
like bully patrol on the playground with your Aries moon and that 12th house sun. You like had compassion probably for the underdogs, or
yes, totally. Yeah. But it wasn't like it was my fight. I mean, it was because I did some things in the fight, but like I was doing it for someone else. So it's really interesting the way you put that. Like they'll, you know, if they're the judge or the jury, they'll go into it, a Libra, but they're not going to be like the center of it.
Yeah. Gina, our Libra here, have you ever been called for jury duty? Have you been on it before?
No, thank God, no.
Okay.
I would die of boredom.
Yeah, it is pretty boring.
Inside out. I would be like a cat in a bag. Yeah, it's like my worst fear.
Once you got through all of it though, and you could just sit through the trial, as long as it wasn't like murder or something, could you like be impartial and like kind of zoom out and see both sides of it, do you feel? Or did you ever watch those like crime? No. Okay, Aries moon.
No, I'm very passionate. Like I will pick a side.
Okay, that's that Aries moon. Very strong. Of course, because it's in the 5th house, not the 12th. And then lastly, just kind of the body parts. I was throwing this into other pods. I think it's kind of fun to like throw it out there. Body parts that Libra rules are the kidneys, the endocrine system, the skin, depending on who you ask. I've also heard the skin be ruled by Cancer. So I think there's some debate about that. And the buttocks. Don't know why Libra rules the butt, but that's kind of awesome. So
I'm a total butt person.
Are you?
I love looking at people's butts.
Oh my God. My Libra sister, when she was little, we used to call her, she had a bubble butt. So I don't know what is with Libra and butts, but yeah, survey your Libra friends, see if they love butts.
I do.
Self-care for Libras. Work on your butts.
Okay. Yes. Ashley, I mean, we need probably longer for self-care today because Libra, and I want to say maybe Cancer, the two signs that need self-care the most and struggle with it.
Yep. You nailed it, Meredith. It's so funny. So, okay. So I'm a South Node, Libra, Aries North Node. We talked before about how when you your descendant, I'm an Aries rising. So I'm an Aries ascendant, my descendant being Libra. Okay. I tend to attract Libras, people that struggle with this, where they give themselves away. They are 100% the most giving humans, the best partners because they do so much, and the best moms. And then they come to me and they're like, I don't know who I am anymore. I've lost myself.
Yeah.
This is like so wild that, you know, you're a descendant, you would be attracted in that way. And, or I would attract that person. And the other type of clients that I attract, it's Libras and Cancers. And it's just 100% that feeling of, I find myself when I serve other people. That's, you know, that's what we think. And I just did this episode a couple weeks ago with this woman, Victoria Albina, on my show. And she talked about codependency. And I always thought, I don't know how you guys interpreted codependency, but I always thought that as like, oh, I was really dependent on like my partner. Like I needed him to, you know, like do the finances, and, you know, he's the one who like rakes the leaves and mows the lawn. Like I'm really dependent on him in that way. Actually, it's so much bigger, bigger than this. It's this idea that we find things, you know, codependent behavior is finding behaviors or duties or roles or people that we can serve, that we can kind of busy ourselves with, so that, you know, we continue to give ourselves to others. And we think that that's what gives us value, right? Oh, well, you're here at my house and I want to get you something to drink. She used this example in the episode. I want to get you something to drink. And they say no. And I'm like, no, let me get it for you. Let me get it for you. It's like that they said no. Why do I need to do that? What's the purpose here, right? So codependent behavior is so much different. And this is where Libra can come into the shadow side. And so we're going to talk about where to balance that, because Libra is the master of balance, but they have to identify those swings in the first place. So yes, it's the scales, but I see it as a pendulum. I see Libra as this big pendulum that when you're swinging over, I'm thinking of you, Gina, you're swinging over one side for so long, and you're being the best sister, you're being the best friend, you're being the best mom. And at some point, you know, you think in your mind that's the best by serving them. At some point, you're going to swing over to the other side. And then what happens? Do you detach? You know, do you lose yourself so much that you have to get away? And I don't want to be like dark and gloomy for Libra, because in fact, Libra is so committed and such, you know, really, really good.
Well, it's not dark and gloomy. I always say Libra is sparkly and unicorny.
There you go.
There's Venus, 2 sides of that pendulum.
Venus rules.
Yeah.
But it's catching yourself on the pendulum before you get too far over to the right, right? It's catching yourself, bringing balance back in. And that luckily is not too challenging. You're just starting to pay attention. How am I finding my own identity in others? How am I finding my own identity in, you know, serving or like doing the dishes? But that doesn't, I don't know. It's not important that I do the dishes. What's important is that I take a moment and reflect on my day, or I breathe for 2 seconds. So what I say to Libras, so many Libras, is just to do that self-study. Where can we bring the balance back? Some Libras might be like, you know what? I'm working my butt off. My work is just killing it. I'm doing so great. Great. Love that. And let's swing it back. How can you bring it back to your personal life, to your family? You know, it's not always like codependent on family. It can be work. It can be really any hobbies, or it's just bringing equanimity, bringing things back to normal, or to balance. I should say not normal, balance, where Libras ruled by Venus, right? Like, well, let's talk about creation and love and beauty, can flippin' thrive. Like there is so much in a Libra that is balanced. So a few short things that they can do is that self-study piece of where potentially am I codependent, where am I people pleasing? And then I think breath work, because it's fast, it's efficient, and it's very intense, and it brings your actual body into that equanimity, is one of the best practices for Libra to get kind of that like intensity out.
Wow. And saying no. Libras literally need to practice saying that word that can be just a simple self-care, but then they have to like go through the motions of the guilt that comes from inside them.
Oh my
and
gosh.
all of that. So self reflection and like, where is this feeling coming from? Is that programmed? Is it in my DNA? Why do I feel like this? The other person might not even be upset that I said no. I'm upset.
No,
It makes
most
no
of the
sense.
time they're not.
I know.
Most of the time it has nothing to do with the other person. It's the other example we used on this episode was like talking about like when my husband's home, I like sometimes feel like I need to look busy during the day. And I'm like, he doesn't care. He does not care at all what I'm doing. You know, I'm working. I might not have a client at that time, whatever. In my mind, I feel like that's like something I need to prove. And that's one of these behaviors, right? Where it's like, I have to find identity in what I'm doing and please other people. And it's like, just go take a flip and go to the bathroom, take a beat.
Yeah, like be a leader in rest and rejuvenation.
100. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes like that is literally the line that I have to use in myself, where it's like people are going to think I'm lazy, and it's like, be a leader to show people what it is to actually rest and rejuvenate. Because what you said, Meredith, is exactly true. It's like, yes, it's about saying no, and it's about releasing the guilt, the shame, the I shoulda, I'm not good
everything
enough.
that surfaces inside you when you say that word, where the other person's like, okay, cool, and you're like a mess. Like,
yes,
I can say no. I give myself permission to say that word.
Yeah. And I think as a Libra, for me, I'll say this to anyone if they feel this way, but for me, I would look at it in like this people pleasing and like losing yourself and stuff like that. It's like, that's almost, in my mind, I maybe feel weird saying this, but I know you all love me. In my mind, that piece is like, that's weakness. And in my family, that was shit that would get preyed on. So if you did it, which you had to do it in my family, if you were going to fucking survive, you made it look like you didn't do it, you know? So it was like, whoever was the angriest, whoever was the whatever. But in denying that, so much of my life, I couldn't even see that it was an issue, because it was like, I don't know, it was almost a tool that I used to get things that I thought I needed, where instead it's like, well, if you actually just admit that you have some people pleasing tendencies, you can actually clean them up and be a little bit happier. Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's kind of ironic too that, you know, that codependent behaviors and people pleasing and things that are culturally normal for women is a Libra tenet. And Libra, when I think of Venus and I think of that like feminine energy, that beauty, that creation energy, like that's, you know, that's that Libra energy. It's feminine and it's caring and it's loving. And yet we have been told that we need to mold the feminine in a certain way. We as women need to look and do things a certain way that has literally, I mean, is crumbling us. It's making us lose our minds. And we're done. I'm done. I hope you guys are done. I'm
done. Like, that's such a layer of like, just getting rid of shit this summer, of like getting rid of shit like that, you know, within me, of that sense. And I think someone who's been raised as a woman, or, you know, culturally trained as a woman, it is when you get into, I feel like, a heterosexual marriage, those like tendencies and push from society to lose yourself in that marriage and be the person for your family, exactly what you were saying, Ashley, that is, I feel like, something that I could easily slip into. And I did, and I don't even have kids. And I have a partner who's like, I want you to be independent, you know? And I still feel like that's what I'm digging up right now in my relationships, is like, whoa, I am really acting in these people-pleasing, codependent ways, because I feel it's easy to do, and society will tell you that's how you win, right? Well, take care of all your man's needs.
It's so unconscious. It's so unconscious.
Yeah.
And as a collective, we're going through so much of bringing consciousness to what is unconscious. And that is going on an individual level big time. Like your unconscious programmed behaviors, or maybe they're not even programmed. I don't know what the right word is. But the people pleasing thing is so easy to miss when you're doing that. And I wanted to say one thing. So Ashley was saying, you know, Venus rules Libra. Venus is the feminine. And Libra is actually a masculine sign.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I forget the yin yang, which one is which, but that is just another sign that Libra is all about balancing those two energies, which are the different sides of the same coin.
That is so interesting.
I just talked to someone, an astrologer for the show, about gendering astrology, and she doesn't gender it. She doesn't really give a sign like feminine, masculine. And I thought that was an interesting approach. But you're so right, Meredith. When I was looking at formally, it is a yang. It is a masculine energy. Yet there is that balance, right? The balance of Libra. There's something feminine still in that masculinity, right? Like we think about toxic masculinity, right? That's not something we don't want to swing that far over, but we also don't want to swing so far over in the feminine that we're just giving ourselves up, right? So like how perfect, like you said, that it would be technically a masculine sign. I just
yeah. Oh wow, I'm gonna be thinking about that.
Yeah, I still do use feminine, masculine. So Capricorn's the other sign I can think of like this. Capricorn is a feminine sign, but it's father energy. So it's also a mixed one. And, I'm cisgender, heterosexual, but I've always felt more masculine. Like that's just how I feel. I made the first moves in relationships. I bring home the bacon, like all that kind of stuff. And I'm coming into terms with more of my feminine energy. I'm going to get my first like makeover soon, finally.
Oh my God, what?
I'm like 41. I need to get some headshots. So if any Leo-y people out there have some recommendations on headshots and makeup and hair and all that kind of stuff, I've never done it. I'm like, I don't want to, but I think I'll like it. I think I'll like it once I look pretty, but I'm like, oh.
So Meredith, are you doing the makeover and you want to document it with photographs, or do you want photographs and so you're doing the makeover?
Need to pay someone to put makeup on me and then pay someone to take pictures of me, because I'm never going to do it myself.
And I need to pay someone to make me do that.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
The profile picture on my webpage is like from 2 years ago, and people who have a session with me will be like, whoa, you have short hair. And it's like, oh God, it's been short like over a year.
I know. I've been in business 4.5 and I took my headshot from my cell phone. So I think I need an upgrade. And I'm a Capricorn. I should have been on this shit. I'm like, Anyway, side tangent.
This Aries rising likes to do a photo shoot like once a month. It's fine.
Oh my God. You need to motivate me. Motivate me, Ashley.
Ashley, I will say it's all of your great professional pictures that motivated me to actually reach out to that photographer and be like, okay, I need to start this process.
Oh, good. Good job.
That's the step I'm actually in, is returning an email. Okay, so anything else on Libra? Otherwise, I'm going to go into some questions.
I just love that we talked about makeovers on the Libra session, because that's kind of perfect.
So perfect.
Yeah,
so perfect. Okay, so Meredith, on an earlier or a previous episode, you had mentioned that you can call the state or the hospital or the county if you like. How do you get someone's birth time if they don't know it?
So I can answer this really for the United States of America. Other countries have different protocols, but if you were born in a hospital in the US, the government knows what time you were born. Once in a while, especially in Wisconsin, for some reason, in different counties, they did not put the birth time on the birth certificate, but they still have records of it. So what you want to do is look up the county of your birth, and it will be called the Department of Vital Statistics or the Department of Birth and Death Records, something like that. And you can call the number on the website. And what I have found in the last year and a half, most government employees are working from home. So they are having better days, and they might give you your birth time over the phone. If they won't, I don't know how you prove who you are. It's really easy to do. You have to fill out a form and then mail in like $13 or something. And they will send you a certified copy of your birth certificate with that birth time. But I'm thinking more and more people are getting this phone call, this department, because birth times are coming so fast and so furious. They just know what to do now. And I haven't had anyone, unless there's an adoption, a closed adoption, things of that nature. If you're born in the US, it might be a little tricky, but I've even had people that have been adopted been able to get their birth time easier than ever before. So if you can't find it, if it's not in your baby book or on your birth certificate, call the county of your birth. Unless you were born, at home or on the way to the hospital, maybe nobody was looking at the clock, but you can give me the best estimate and I can work with that.
Okay. Okay. And so then my next question is just because of who I am. I don't know if this is Scorpio or what, but I had this thought of like, ooh, the way I'm thinking about this might be unethical. So if someone is alive walking around and I know the hospital they were born at, and I want to know the time of birth without asking them, can I look that up, or is that unethical, not good?
I would say that is unethical.
It feels
and I don't think
unethical,
you'd
but
be, I don't think you'd be able to do it. I don't know. I've never actually called that department. I don't think you could do it. But I have worked with my pendulum trying to, nail down birth times or at least windows. And even if you have your chart in your birth time, you can do a lot with synastry without the other person's birth time. It doesn't matter for a ton with synastry. Yeah.
Okay. Because even I'm thinking about my parents, right? Like they have no idea what time they were born. Their parents are either not alive or not in a condition to remember that.
The government should know. Yeah, I mean, in the rare occasions, hospitals burn down, things in the 40s, 50s, so the records might have been lost, but there should be documentation. At least going back to the 30s.
Oh, okay. So then my kind of like part B to this question was, so say I'm talking to someone, they're difficult, and they mention when they were born. Is it unethical for me just to kind of secretly look behind their back at their birth chart? Is that unethical? That feels less unethical, but I feel something. I don't
No,
know
this is a juicy question. There's not really an easy answer. So I will tell you my ethics and then kind of what I picked up on working with OPA, the Organization for Professional Astrologers. I will not pull a birth chart without the other person's permission unless it's a child under the age of 15. I will pull a birth chart for a parent if they're really struggling with that child. But if they're 16, I actually want the 16-year-old's permission to pull their chart. Verbally is just fine. Even partners, husband, wives, I'm like, all right, I want a verbal confirmation from you. You talk to your partner about it. I'm going to be looking at their chart without them in the room. Most people are like, whatever, I don't care. When there is just a birthday, I will actually read, if somebody comes in with a crush or, somebody they know and they know the birthday, I'll read the birthday, but I'm actually reading every single person born on the planet on that day. Mm-hmm. So I'm not really narrowing it down to the moment they took their first breath. So I will kind of do that gray area. I'm like, I'll look at the birthday, but I'm not going to pull their actual chart without permission. That's kind of how I work. So I use about age 16 to get that verbal confirmation. Other astrologers have different ethics with that. But I really try and take that seriously and, look at a birthday. So like celebrities, I'll watch, Netflix show and I'll try and guess their signs, the celebrities, and then I'll, look online. You can usually get the birthday and you can get a lot just from that birthday chart if you really like a celebrity and want to kind of know their cosmic ingredients.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. And then you said too, just with the synergy report.
Synastry, yeah.
Synastry, yeah.
Yep, and that is taking two charts and putting them on top of each other. And if you have the one person's birth time, you can do a lot with that. You can get the aspects, and that's complicated. Your brain will start to melt. Make sure you learn how to read one chart before you start stacking them on top of each other.
Yeah, I have gotten so much out of those things. I've done it with a few different people, as you know, Meredith, and it is always really illuminating. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's a Libra thing, but I learn about myself so much in how I operate with relationship with other people. And some people, are a little bit more impactful than other people, just, I don't know, based on whatever. But so to be able to be like, God, this is really frustrating, or I don't know what to do here, or what is this thing that I can't put my finger on, to be able to do a synastry report was really, really, really helpful.
Yeah, and even knowing the birth chart of your spouse, since we're all married here, like I get lost in the spell, what I call it the spell of the ego. Like you get sucked in, you start having those little squabbles or like just stupid stuff. And then I'll zoom out and like look at my husband's chart and I'm like, oh yeah, remember he's wired like this. It's like so unconscious. It's like just his wiring and it's not anything malicious towards me. I just kind of have to zoom out and have compassion and acceptance for that. And I cannot tell you, I think I've said this on the pod before, learning astrology has helped me have compassion for the people that have, gotten under my skin. I couldn't understand, like that has just added a layer of richness to my life when I can look at someone's chart and be like, oh, that's what's under that surface. That's what's going on inside of them. Or like, I don't know what's going on inside another person, but I can make an educated guess with a chart. And it's just like instant compassion.
And with kids, I find this to be one of the most helpful things to know their charts, know the charts of my children, because as we know, as we grow older, we're conditioned into these different versions of what we think we're supposed to be. And my kids are still little, so they're still very much like in their authenticity. And I want to keep it that way as much as I can, because I know what their authenticity is. I know, okay, there's a lot of fire in these tiny little ladies. I'm not going to pour water on them all the time. I'm not going to emote on them all the time, like, which is my nature, right? I want to just, love and cry on you guys, but like, actually they need to be lit up. And that as a parent is just, I feel like is the best gift. 100%.
Oh, I love that. I think every parent should study astrology or get readings. Can really help with the kids.
Yeah, I agree with that. The little I've kind of peeked into that in some of the kids in my life. I definitely feel that. Okay, so another thing I wanted to touch on is the North and South nodes. I don't remember if we've actually discussed this like on the pod, but even if we do, I'm sure we'll think of different things and examples. So it'd be a way for us to all learn it again. But what do you two, how would you describe, or how would you describe North-South node, and what does that mean in someone's life? Like, how can they use that information? What have you seen? What do you believe?
Yeah, the South Node in astrology, I mean, in my practice, evolutionary speaking, it's the past life symbol in the chart. Is where you come from. It's your comfort zone. It's like your fuzzy slippers. This is where I want to just stay because this energy is easy for me. You don't have to work too hard at the energy, the sign that your South Node falls into. Your North Node is where you're heading. So theoretically, this is the sign that is troublesome for you. You really want to incorporate into your being more of the sign, but it's like not your easy kind of lane, like your South Node. It's where you're heading. And the magic in this is in this lifetime, you're supposed to meet in the middle of these 2 points in your chart. For balance, as we're talking about balance in the Libra pod today. And it can be a difficult path, and different people in your life will kind of teach you your North Node, whether you want to learn that energy or not. But a lot of people, I feel like I think I've said this on the pod, I feel like I'm still stuck in my South Node. So I'm struggling for me to get to that Leo energy. And I've seen so many people that resonate with their South Node more than their sun sign. And the sun sign is just, again, a piece of you. It's not the whole you. And I see so many people resonating with that South Node, more so, even sometimes more than the moon. So it's really fascinating to even just start there in a birth chart reading.
Yeah. Ashley, how do you use it? What do you know?
I know I have lots of thoughts on it, and coming from the lens of how people are discovering who they are, as they're working through prioritizing themselves, as they're putting their own needs first. Knowing where they are evolving is really, really helpful. So peeking at North Node, for me, it gives me a snapshot of where they're headed. Channing Nicholas describes the North Node as how and where you're insatiable. So you're always trying to satisfy that need. You're always working towards it, but you never really will get there. And that might feel kind of negative, but in fact, it's like a moving target, right? You come in with your South Node in one area, you've learned some lessons, and now you're this other target. It's a moving target, but it continues to allow you to move towards it and find purpose, right? So I think the North Node is purpose for me, if I were to sum it down. And so my North Node's in Aries. So there's always going to be this flavor in everything that I do of finding myself, of trying to catch that version of myself that keeps kind of running away from me, but it's still there, right? And that's continues to shift and grow. And part of my mission is to teach people how to do that while I'm doing it at the same time. So again, I look for purpose. If somebody's really struggling with who they are and what their life's work is and how that they can prioritize themselves, I will look to North Node for some inspiration for sure.
Yeah. I just remember that was one of the things, Meredith, that really drew me to you. Was I went to your cosmic yoga with Ashley.
Yeah.
And it was, you had talked about the nodes and I was like, whoa. And just, I think I had asked you, I think we all had like 5 minutes of reading or something. And I had asked you about the nodes, and just what you had said about my North Node really like summed up how I've felt in my career, like the painful parts and the things where I could actually never get satisfied. I mean, the way you describe that is like, yes, it was really interesting. And even for me, when I see these sides that like aren't good or desirable, it's like, if I can just understand that like cosmically, this is what I'm dealing with, then at least I don't have to beat myself up about it, you know, or at least I can kind of expect that wave to come back in of being like, oh, see, you're not successful enough, you know, and then whatever. Just to me, that's just gives me peace to know right away. I always think, how am I fucked up? How am I fucking this up? And it's like, oh, it comes by naturally. Oh, this was part of the plan. Okay, I'll deal with it. Yeah.
And
Okay.
I want to say one thing before we move
Yeah.
on, and I'm curious if any of the astrologers listening have had this experience. I've noticed in my practice that people that had childhood trauma or something traumatic or a traumatic childhood, whatever that looks like, jumped to their North Node really, really early in life. And they went gung-ho North Node. And by the time they come to me in their 30s, 40s, 50s, I'm like, okay, we got to backtrack. You weren't comfortable in your childhood. So in my theory is like they jumped to that North Node because they didn't get a comfort zone. So I'm like, we got to go backwards. We got to go back to your comfort zone and find where you're comfortable. So you don't just keep, gung-hoing this North Node. You got to come back and rein it in a little bit and find a little bit of the talents and the gifts from your South Node. So I've seen that a few times. And Ashley, I'm sure you've run across clients with trauma in their childhood. It's just something that I've noticed. I'm a statistics junkie. I want to say like maybe 20% or 30% of people with childhood trauma have really just gone too fast, too quickly into the North Node energy.
I would say what you just said, describing that, describes my life from age like 20 to 35. So, yeah, I feel that for sure. Like, and it almost is, I don't know if I'm interpreting it this correctly, Meredith, but it's almost like I shot for it. I got some of it, but the foundation just was not there. And so
I love
like,
the way, I love how you just said that.
Just fell. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to have roots in that South Node before you even venture to the North Node. Make sure you have a comfort zone to fall back on.
And the purpose too is that you're experiencing the journey. You are really learning the lessons through the process of moving towards that moving target, right? Because if you hit the target, then what? It's this whole process. It's this whole evolutionary journey. And I don't know if skip steps works into it this way, Meredith. I don't know enough about skip steps, but I feel like that's sort of that same energy, right? Like you skip something that you have to go back and revisit.
Yeah, maybe we could do a pod on skip steps. I'm obsessed with them, especially since so many of my clients have had past life regressions. So skip step, for anyone listening that knows astrology, is a planet or a point that squares the lunar nodes in your chart, squares 90 degrees away from that node. And I have a whole workshop and presentation on skip steps. And I'm learning a lot about them working with Natalie Fowler, the psychic I work with 2 days a week. While she's pulling in past life stories, I've got the chart in front of me, just like with my mouth on the ground, seeing what comes in. So yeah, interesting that you're working with those, Ashley, because there's a huge piece of a comfort zone or a life mission or purpose that was skipped in prior lifetimes for some reason. I never know the reason, but it shows up in the birth chart.
you can have skip steps between you and someone else.
Correct.
Is that right?
And there's also skip steps. You could think of them activated from months, years, weeks at a time in your chart. But yeah, you can have skip steps with other people. So you're supposed to accomplish something with another person in another lifetime, and that's going to show up in this lifetime on repeat until you two figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh shit, people, buckle up. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap this up, but my last question is, and I had sent this to you all earlier, so the question that I've been thinking about a lot off and on, and really since my Life Between Lives session earlier this year, was this idea of like living a life of no regrets. And my question is this something you think about? If yes, what do you think about it, and how does it inform your actions, your decisions, your behaviors? And if no, if you never think about it, like what's your relationship with regret? Like, do you ever think about it? Do you carry a lot of it? Ashley, you want to go first?
Yeah, I like when this question came through. I don't know. I'm with you, Meredith. Like I think, or Gina, I think about this, and
yeah,
it's hard to know. I still feel really early on in this life journey to like, when I get to my deathbed, will I think that I've regretted it? Will I feel any regret towards something? I don't know. But at this point in my life, I don't feel like I have any regrets whatsoever. However, I do, and without giving too many specifics, I do see people in my life that I think have some significant regrets. So like, I feel that's a gift to be able to see that, to be able to have open eyes to see what regret does look like, because I don't want that. And I think that means that for me at least, there's more risk in life. Like you take more risks, you get selfish, and that's a good thing for sure. And you ask yourself the really hard questions. I talked about this on Instagram recently, like this idea of mom guilt, when the actual question about overcoming mom guilt for me was like, how much do I actually want to hang out with my kids? How much do I actually want to work? If I have the choice to decide where I land in those areas, what's my actual answer here? No judgment from anyone else. Truly, how much time do I want? And that's like a really hard question to ask yourself, because you're like, I should be spending time with them all the time, or I should be working, whatever it is. So it's like, if I don't want to sit in regret with that particular area of life, then I have to answer these hard questions. I have to take some risks. I have to get selfish.
Yes. Yeah. What about you, Meredith? Thank you, Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have a life of, I'm living for the moment per day, and I've made peace with my own mortality. Like I always had to think, like, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, like no regrets. My shadow work I'm doing with regret now is behaviors or decisions I made in the past in ignorance. Like I didn't know, like I grew up super Catholic in a small town bubble. So my behaviors 25 years ago were very different. I did not have like an open mind. I was very closed-minded about a lot of things. So I'm working through my past and working to forgive myself about my behaviors I made just being ignorant or being closed-minded. And I'm like, was that my fault? Like I'm going through all of that kind of stuff. But no, going forward, I'm good. In the present, I'm very good, but I'm still going back into my past to undo some regret. And then, I have little things, like I just redid my 1930s bathroom in my house. I regret hiring the company that I did. They didn't do a very good job. So like, I'm like, I'm kind of a little bit mad at myself for that. But again, like that's my present day. It's much easier to forgive myself presently than more things in my past, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That is so funny, Meredith. I didn't know that you grew up in a small town Catholic. I don't think I knew that. Should we rename Catholic. These episodes?
Literally, like
moving through undoing your small town Catholicism ignorance.
Well, I actually started telling
everybody's ignorant.
I started telling my clients that. So every time I do a session, I explain that I practice evolutionary astrology, and I ask permission to go to like karma and past life symbols. And I still get no's on that, and that's totally fine. But then I make a joke. I'm like, well, I grew up Catholic, so I had nuns. My first grade teacher was a nun, and I was not talking about past lives or reincarnation. back in the day. So yes, I did grow up super Catholic, very small town Minnesota. Yeah.
What is that, you guys? That's like, it literally like, this is our whole life. And I you could have seen this coming. Gina, you and I have talked about this before. Like my obsession with like Satan, and not necessarily like liking Satan, but like being so intrigued by like, why is this a thing? Why are we afraid of Satan and like possession and like all these things growing up, that of course we would land in this world of just straight up weirdness and like it being so awesome. Like
plenty of time in the dark arts.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, this was amazing and completely enlightening as usual. Next up, what do we have? What's after Libra? Scorpio. And I'm a Scorpio rising. So
Scorpio.
I'm excited. Let's do
I
it.
gotta look up. I gotta have some good off the wall questions for Scorpio.
Let's talk about sex, please. Because that's Scorpio vibes. Like, let's get there, shall we?
Yes.
I
Actually,
think
we were just talking about that. Remember
Okay.
at First House Scorpio, you were like, what I was talking about, you were like, where's Scorpio in your chart? I'm like,
I made a joke with Gina like months ago. I was like, maybe I should do an edible before we record the Scorpio podcast, because I will get paranoid as fuck. And I'm like, well, that's Scorpio. Like, we'll see what happens, you guys. Oh, and we should say we are all getting together in person for the first time tomorrow.
Yeah, so, let's try to take a picture.
Yeah, we'll get a picture for social media. And
Meredith is going to get a makeover. She's going to get a makeover, and then we're going to take a picture.
Oh my God. You have to drag me to my makeover.
Just kidding. You don't need one, Meredith.
But yeah, we'll do notes on Scorpio, so we'll have a good episode. We'll get real deep. We'll get real deep.
And maybe manifestation, sex and manifestation, because those are sort of in the same world, weirdly.
Ooh,
yes,
they are. I mean, it's all
they totally
that creative energy.
Totally.
Transformation too. The Phoenix. Yeah.
Fuck yeah. All right, ladies, I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
And we will be back in a month.
Awesome.
Bye.
And that is our astrology and self-care episode for this Libra time of year. As always, check the show notes for things to find out more. If you're thinking, hey, I want to know more about Ashley, about Meredith, about me, check the show notes to get all of that information. And thank you so much for being here, for listening, for spreading the word. Last month, I had let you know we were close to 100,000 downloads, and we have surpassed it. I cannot believe it. You all, I was so excited. When I released my first episode, I had told maybe like 5 people about it, and 15 people downloaded it, and I was like, oh my God, who are these other 10 people? Anyway, 83 episodes and 100,000 downloads later, I am so happy. I feel like this is the beginning of even more good things to come. So thank you so much for being here with me. As always, take anything from this episode that helps you feel a little bit better in this world and just leave the rest.